All right, we've got Adesanya versus Imavov fight night this Saturday, and that's kicking off a string of 12 UFC events. So we're going to have action for you guys pretty much every week for the foreseeable future. This is a great way to start it off. Let's get into this card. A lot of fun fights.
Bada bing, bada boom. Israel Adesanya walked inside the room. All right, we got some camels because it is it hump day? I don't think it's hump day. No, it's not hump day. It's Tuesday, so we're going up like it's a club. Moving forward, we have Hamdi, even better. Abdel Wahab versus Jamal Pogues. I'm more familiar with Pogues. I just know the name. Looks like two heavy hitters. My guess is what we're expecting first round finish, second round finish based off the size of these guys. What should we be expecting?
So Hamdi this is his first fight back after he was suspended because he just had a ton of PEDs in him after his first UFC win like 2 years ago.
A ton.
Yeah, no,
Wait.
like they were just going through his system.
Elaborate on this.
Like multiple here. Let's try to.
What happened to Hamdi Dumpty? I don't know. He's making me think of Humpty Dumpty for some reason.
Yeah, he tested positive for methanolone and its metabolite. Okay, I think it was just that, but I think he was just like very fully juiced.
So he tested positive for meth. Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
So he's going to be without his powers a little bit.
You would think, but he is like he was an Olympic wrestler. He's from Egypt, but wrestled on the Iranian Olympian team. Who knows if he was also juiced up back in those
Gotta
days.
be
a little bit. I feel like harder to get through the Olympic
for sure
benchmarks for that, but he is a powerful guy. Definitely, even though he is a wrestler, he can land big shots. Obviously, not technical or accurate, but he has powerful hands. Good takedowns, very good wrestler. He, like I said, he was juiced up in his last fight, and he still looked pretty sloppy. It was on short notice, so you can give him a little bit of credit there, I guess. But we basically, it's just like a mystery box. What we're gonna get from Hamdi, we have no idea. Like we haven't seen him fight in 2 years. We haven't seen him fight clean, and he's going up against a guy who's pretty good in Jamal Pogues, who is a pretty high volume guy. 3.36 strikes landed per minute. Pretty busy for this weight class. Not a ton of power in his hands, but probably just the more technical striker of the two. Accurate. He can grapple. He had 7 takedowns in his Contender Series fight. He's coming off a win over Thomas Peterson, who's also fighting on this card. And Pogues got that win with, I'd say, his cardio. Peterson kind of gassed out and just high volume, like I said, which is pretty typical of Jamal Pogues. The one thing I have noticed about Jamal Pogues that I think is probably going to be a deciding factor here is that he tends to look like a fish out of water on his back. His grappling is really not the best. And this is a heavyweight fight. So I ultimately, Hamdi, as long as he's able to get that one takedown around, I think he's going to be able to get that control time and just have Jamal on his back. So I'm going with Hamdi here in his return.
Hamdi.
Probably by decision.
Just a fun name, Hamdi.
I know. I really like it. I might have to name my son Hamdi someday.
Hamdi the Handyman. All right. Moving on, we've got Bogdangrad versus Lucas Alexander. I remember seeing this picture before. That's all I remember, though. Or perhaps there's a variation of this exact same fighter somewhere else.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about him in some detail because he was the guy who fought against Michael Aswell on Contender Series this season and beat him. So
that makes sense. All right, so let's dive into that then.
Yeah, so Bogdan, I mean, I picked Michael Aswell in that fight. Might have been a little bit biased there, but he's like Bogdan really impressed me because I think Aswell is going to be like a guy in the UFC. He just won in Fury pretty handily. So Bogdan is a well-rounded guy, good striking, good jab, doesn't really chase. He's patient, doesn't really chase finishes, but he still seems to find them. Can work in the wrestling too, sets up takedowns with that jab that I mentioned. And when he's wrestling, he'll definitely chain wrestle a little bit if he's not like, if he's in wrestling mode, he's not always just chain wrestling. He can strike too and will, settle for a fist fight if it's going his way. When he takes you down, he's generally not really looking to like switch up positions, get that sub. He's more looking to keep you on the ground and get that control time. Lucas Alexander is more of a striker, very powerful guy, manages range well. He does that particularly well with his kicks. Can also fight in the pocket. Just starts letting his hands go when it gets close. Grappling is just okay. But good grappling defense, coming off a knockout loss to Jekka Saragi, who's just is not like a very good fighter at all. And Lucas, definitely the more exciting of the two, probably the more dangerous. Even though Bogdan does have a lot of stoppages in his wins, 11 stoppages total in his wins. I'm picking Grad here in his debut. I think Lucas could definitely even get finished in this one. Yeah.
All right. Right. You got anything for this one?
No.
All right. Let's go forward. Abdul Karim Al-Sawadi versus Balaji Oki. So Balaji seems very new to me, but he seems okie dokie. Whereas Al-Sawadi, I feel like we've seen him before, and it looks like his face is like mid slow-mo to the, I guess, right or left, depending upon how you look at this picture.
Yeah. Mid getting punched in the face.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like, probably him if he ever saw me, or me if he ever saw me, or however you want. Yeah. Anyways, let's break into this.
Yeah, definitely a broken nose or two there. But Al-Sawadi was supposed to fight Jordan Levitt, and now he is fighting Balaji Oki, who is a striker. He was going to be fighting a grappler, so his camp was probably oriented on stopping a guy like that. Balaji's probably also just a tough opponent in general. But Abdul is a high pressure guy. He's always coming forward at you. He can throw really hard. He definitely gets hit. You could see that. Do we have strike? Yeah. Do we have strikes absorbed? No, we don't have strikes absorbed on here, but he gets hit a lot. He also can work in some takedowns. People tend to forget that when they fight him. Because his striking is so good and he's relentless with the pressure. He just hides those takedowns behind his striking efforts really well. Going up against Balaji Oki, who's a solid striker, also a forward pressure guy, I would say. Good combos, very explosive, good jab. Decent takedowns when he finds those openings. Does gas out a little bit later into fights. But he could definitely, he maintains that power. He can be dangerous late into fights, is always staying busy. He is coming off a loss where he was absolutely lighting up Chris Duncan and then just got caught by a guillotine. And both of these guys are super high pressure fighters. I am going to give the slight lean to Al-Sawadi in this one, just because he had the full fight camp. Balaji tends to slow down. Al-Sawadi maintains all of his cardio for 3 rounds. I'll also give the wrestling / grappling edge to Al-Sawadi. So I like it here. I think it's a really, really solid play on PredictionStrike.
Yeah, I think short notice, getting a new opponent. I feel like usually that kind of guy is the significant favorite in the fight. So it was weird for a guy to go from the favorite against his former opponent to an underdog when given a new opponent. I feel like that's a pretty rare scenario. So one that I think is worth taking a stab at on PredictionStrike and elsewhere because he's an underdog everywhere. So
yeah, totally.
I like it. Yeah, let the damage rain. Jasmine Joseph Odysseus versus Mayra Bueno Silva. For whatever reason in my head, this screams like it's actually a pretty big fight given their names and their prospect status, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has like ranking implications. I think, if Jasmine wins this, she'll probably be in the top 10 in the division. So they
might just swap.
Yeah, totally.
Because you got Mayra at 7 and Jasmine at 12. I feel like if she wins, you could just see her at 7.
I think that's probably a good shout. And yeah, I think just to preface with whichever side of this fight you're on, I think like last time I checked, it was about or nearing 2.5 to 1 odds for Jesuda Vicious. And I just think that's kind of insane. But you're getting a really good price for her on PredictionStrike. So if you're on the JJ side of things, don't take her in the books. But Jasmine Jasudavicius is a really, really strong wrestler. Transitioned to MMA from wrestling. She applies good forward pressure, just a grinder, takes you down. Also not afraid of a fist fight. Striking is not very powerful. Not the most high volume, not the least volume ever. But she is powerful. She's very tough, very dangerous grappler. I honestly don't know how to call this one because I like Myra a lot. She's super tough. She's proven, fought multiple world champions. Jasmine hasn't. I think, honestly, I'm going to go because it seems like it's been a trend in women's fights. I'm going to go with Jasudavicius just because he has the ability to grind and wrestle where Myra might not be able to, which is kind of like it seems like it's been a deciding factor in a lot of these women's fights. So I'm going to go with Jasudavicius. I do think 2-1 is crazy for her, though. So I'd rather take her on PredictionStrike than anywhere else easily.
For sure. It also feels like in this spot where you have a veteran versus somebody who, regardless of age, is kind of moving up the rankings later in their career or something and has some hype behind them, that we've faded them in the past, I feel like. And it seems like the prospect equivalent has tended to win more often than not. So I feel like we're sensing a bit of a trend and it's time to kind of pick up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you just kind of have to go with Jasmine here. Just looking at it from a short frame, the only person that she's lost here is Tracy Cortez, who's beat, or I guess lost to Rose after the distance.
I'd say I do think Myra's better than her recent record, though, because she got cut in the face in the last fight, fought for the title before that, and she beat Holly Holm in the fight before that, but she tested positive for like Ritalin or Adderall or something. So that got discounted. So I do think, I will say, for what it's worth, Myra is better than her recent record.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right. With that said, we'll move on to the next one. Ziam versus Mike Davis. If I remember correctly, Ziam is a very boring fighter, correct?
Yeah, usually. He's usually extremely boring, but he did get a finish in his last fight against the Steamroller.
Ooh.
So,
all right.
But yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Ferez is normally a super technical kind of point dancing sort of striker. Destroyed Favola in his last fight. Was just engaging the whole time, kind of looked like a completely different fighter. But I'd say Mike Davis is kind of a different level than Favola is. Very fast, athletic guy, powerful, does a good job of transitioning to wrestling when he's in trouble on the feet. Good kicks, just a well-rounded guy. He's had 14 takedowns in his last 4 fights, and comes along with probably a positive winning percent of successful striking exchanges. And he just finished Natan Levy, where he just displayed the power in that one. He has had kind of an injury-riddled career. He's coming off of a bicep injury. He is 100% the far more dangerous and athletic of the two. Ferez is definitely the more technical striker of the two. He also has the wrestling edge, I would say. So I'm going to give Mike Davis a slight lean here. Just because he is so good at range with those kicks and stuff that I think Ferez is going to have a hard time keeping it at distance, because Ferez isn't, I don't think, going to be able to have the same sort of fight that he displayed last time and just go balls to the walls. I think he's going to have to kind of revert to his old points fighting self if he's going to want to beat a guy like Mike Davis here.
I like it. All right. On to the next one, it sounds like. Terrence McKinney versus Damir Hadzovic. We actually had the fortune of Jackson chatting with McKinney, some of which can't talk about here. You'll have to go check out their page to hear that. Jackson, that's a perfect time for you to plug your stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But let's
if you guys
walk into the fight after that.
if you guys watch this, make sure to check out UFC Chit Chat. It's on YouTube, TikTok, and IG. You'll just find the clips from all of our videos. First episode's out with Terrence McKinney, so check that out. There'll be more fights with other fighters coming. But yeah, had the pleasure of speaking with him while he was training in Saudi. He seems really ready for the fight. Seems like he has his game plan ready to go against Demir. He even said something. He said he's going back to his Black Khabib ways. So I think we could potentially expect some more wrestling and grappling oriented fighting from the Terrence McKinney corner than we have seen in probably like his last 5 fights, where it's been almost completely striking oriented, which could be fun to see. But yeah, Terrence is a really good wrestler, national champion, JUCO wrestler. Very fast, powerful, and accurate. Good BJJ. Cardio has always been a question because he's only ever been to the 3rd round once. He is considered by many as somewhat chinny. But I mean, he looks to be in his bag, so to speak, ahead of Saudi Arabia. Very talented guy. He sort of switched from subbing people all the time and really quickly to knocking people out. Kind of stopped wrestling, but I think he still has that in his bag. He's training for a 3-round fight against Demir Hadzovic, who's a really tough guy. He's really tough, but he's old, has a bunch of losses, isn't the best anywhere. He is an okay striker. Definitely comes forward. He likes to get you against the cage and then drag you down from there. And I think if Demir could weather an early storm from McKinney, and I think a fun prop for this bet could be McKinney by decision. I just think Terrence is better everywhere here, though. The odds, I think, are too far gone outside of PredictionStrike on this fight, though. 4-1 is kind of insane for a guy that's as off and on as Terrence McKinney is. But yeah, I just think Terrence is better everywhere in this one.
Demir looks like a Russian porcelain doll that would come to life at night and haunt his family.
He definitely looks like Russian royalty.
I definitely see that. If it doesn't go to decision, though, it sounds like I think we just have to go with McKinney round 1 sub, right? Especially if we're getting Black Khabib back here.
Yeah, I think that's a really fun one too. If we're gonna trust Terrence with that, and it's if he says that, seems like I would imagine the game plan has at least involved, or the training has at least involved a lot more wrestling and grappling. So yeah, I think a sub could be a fun shout in this one.
I like it. All right, on to the next one here. And for what it's worth, in case you forgot, that's an extra 5% bonus on a finish for our fighters on the stock market. So now we got Shamil Gaziev posing for us. I like this little model shot, man.
Peterson looks like the man.
Versus, Thomas Peterson, who's we got as a Walmart Shane Gillis. So walk us through this one here. Should the price for one be this far apart? I guess.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, he's like minus 350-ish on the market, so it feels fair. I do think this fight could just be whoever lands the biggest punch in the first round, and then from there, things just kind of spiral for either opponent. But it feels like Gaziev has the much more talented skill set just kind of across the board. Obviously, the takedown defense is really good, which could have been a potential plus for Thomas Peterson there. Can land strikes, kind of play at a distance. I don't think Shamil should be in much trouble in this one.
Yeah, I totally agree. I Shamil gets memed a lot, but I definitely just because his cardio is so bad, but he definitely looked improved in his gas tank when he came back and beat Dontel Mays. Thomas Peterson is solid everywhere, not really amazing anywhere. And Shamil has a genuinely good skill set that could propel him far in this division. I think the UFC kind of just gave him a lot for where he is at in his career when they put him up against Biggie Boy, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. That was just his second fight. And I think as long as his cardio's a little bit on point, as long as he's been hitting that treadmill, he's going to be the much better fighter. And I think, honestly, it's not terrible pricing at all.
I don't know if he even needs to hop on you look across from him, and I don't know if Thomas's cardio is going to be holding up either. So
yeah, that's very true.
Could just be two dudes wheezing, thugging it out at the end.
Would love to see that.
All right. Moving on to the next one. Muhammad Naimov versus Khan Ofli. I'm rather confident I've heard of Naimov before, but Khan, that's new for me. So walk me through this one.
Yeah, it sounds about right. Khan is a decent fighter. Got knocked out by Marlon Santos in his last fight. He's kind of a jiu-jitsu nerd, black belt. Not the best takedowns, just okay striking. Very, very busy in his grappling. He's not long at all. Like a lot of these submission artists you see are. He's pretty short, which is kind of a tough build at this level of MMA, especially when you're pretty much only relying on your BJJ, because you can't wrap things up. You can't get those darces. Naimov, well-rounded guy, can definitely wrestle and strike. Probably more formidable in his striking. Fast, athletic, explosive guy. Comes forward at you, throws in combos, transitions to his wrestling well. And I think ultimately it's kind of straightforward in the sense that Naimov should have the submission defense for Khan Ofli. Should have a showcase fight, particularly in the striking department. I think I'm really confident in Naimov in this one.
I like it. Grant, you want to throw anything on this one? Or
no, just also you're getting tremendous value. You got basically a minus 310 favorite at just 26 cents higher. So if you're going to take Naimov, here's the place to do it by far.
I like it. All right. On to the next one. Too fast, too far. Said Nurmagomedov versus Vinicius Oliveira. I've heard their names before, but what should we be expecting from this fight?
Yeah, Saeed, he's got the last name, but he is mostly a striker who is very long, uses the length to manage range well, good kicks, moves in and out of the pocket, deep bag of tricks. Takedown defense is relatively mids at 65%. Can wrap up submissions on the ground with that length. He has 3 fights won by guillotine in his last 5 fights. He's actually coming off a guillotine win over Muin Gafarov. And Lock Dog, Vinicius Oliveira, super aggressive guy, throws the kitchen sink at you, really, really dangerous. And that kind of fighter is always sometimes sloppy, but he's always looking for a finish. Absolute madness on both the ground and the feet. He's just nonstop. And he's coming off a decision win over Ricky Simone, where he just looked really good in that one, defended 9 of his takedowns, doubled his strikes. And I am going to go with the underdog Lock Dog in this one, because I think Saeed in a lot of his wins has really benefited from that length in this division, and he's not going to be able to use that length like he normally does because Vinicius is so long himself. Vinicius also has really good cardio, a really good wrestler. I mean, he can be sloppy. He can definitely get caught. I just don't know if I'm confident in Saeed being able to catch him in this one.
Yeah, I think this could be a 2-week span where the Nurmagomedov name falls off a little bit.
Yeah, never happens.
I'm very happy to see it, though. I think getting some new countries represented would be good. All the Russian mixes are getting a little bit tired.
They're all coming from that one mountain, mountain
Dagestan.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's not able to wrestle like the rest of the Nurmagomedovs, I'm not as worried. So moving forward, it just sounds like a situation that people will hear the last name and be like, "Oh, I know that name." And then,
I totally think so. And it's the odds for Oliveira have been tightening for like 2 weeks. I'm pretty sure Saeed was like a 3-1 favorite like 2.5 weeks ago.
Yeah, I don't agree with that a lot. All right, we got the point. Moving forward, take Vinicius, make some money on PredictionStrike potentially, or limit your losses, one or the other. With that said, we got Sergey versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Am I being disrespectful, Rozenstruik, to feel like this is a massive step down for Sergey after his last fight?
I don't know. Jairzinho's kind of been on a heater. He's been looking really good.
So
I
walk
think,
us through it, because clearly I'm not familiar enough with this game.
so Pavlovic, I mean, he is a big favorite here. Not enormous, I think. Like, Grant, can you verify? I think like around 3-1, maybe 2.5 to 1.
Yeah, exactly. Well, minus 300 for Pavlovic. Okay. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, both of these guys are heavyweight strikers. You can see both of them have 0 takedown accuracy, 0 takedowns average. This is going to be a striking match. And Sergey is a really fast, powerful striker, absolutely massive guy. Power is probably his best asset, like in tandem with his speed. He really had trouble against Volkov defending the jab. He just couldn't land anything with that constantly, with the threat of that in his face the entire fight. And I could definitely see Jairzinho exposing that. He's a really good Muay Thai fighter, transitioned to MMA. He won't have to worry about defending takedowns here. Obviously, he's going to be striking the entire time, which is where both he and Pavlovic thrive. Really heavy hands. I'd say likes to counter strike more often than not. Really good at making his opponents pay for overcommitting, which is definitely something to watch out for with Pavlovic, who comes out really hot. And he also does a really good job of conserving his energy late into fights. So I mean, and I gotta shout him out for his last fight against Tai Tuivasa, which was absolutely dominant, super clean, technical. And I do think Rozenstruik can win here. I'm going to go with Pavlovic by a first round knockout. I think that is where I lean, but I do think if it gets out of the first round, this one is going to be in Rozenstruik's hands because his gas tank is so good, because he's so technical for this weight class. Like, Sergey is a great striker. He's always been a striker, but he is not as technical as Jairzinho is. So I'm going Pavlovic first round KO, but anything else, if it goes past that, he weathers the storm. I'm going Rozenstruik.
Yeah, I mean, the value here is just pretty undeniable. It's tough to not take Sergey in this spot, given the odds you'd find elsewhere. So I'm just going to keep this one simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a must play on PredictionStrike, realistically. With that said, moving forward, Shara versus Michael Page. Shara posted a very interesting video on the internet ahead of their fight, but outside of that, what should we be expecting from this fight? What exactly was it, Jackson? It was like
with the shotgun on a couch, and he was like, he's threatening Michael Page.
Yeah, like nice. It was just like, okay, it's a little far.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, it was funny. But this is a sick co-main. I feel like two really exciting fighters, a lot of hype behind the two. God, I wish MVP was just a bit younger, because I feel like we haven't seen enough of him in the UFC. Such a late signing, and he's looked so sick since entering. But yeah, Shara is a super hot prospect. He's been in a winning form in the UFC, but definitely not as insane of a finisher as we might have thought when he was first coming into the UFC. He did just get that nasty spinning back elbow. But he's very fun and creative when he wants to be. Can be low volume at times, but he does have plenty of cardio. Not a wrestler at all, really, but he has decent get-up game if you do try to wrestle with him, kind of slippery. And yeah, he had that nasty knockout against Armin Petrosian. But Venom Page is a karate striker with that wide base, keeps his hands low, kind of like Wonder Boy. Very fast, moves in and out super well, good kicks, can be a bit hittable at times because of that karate stance. But he's just so fast that he makes people miss. And he's coming off a loss to Ian Gary, where he was, I mean, the reason why Ian beat him is because Ian successfully transitioned to wrestling in that fight, but MVP was beating him in the striking, which is the reason why Ian Gary transitioned to wrestling in that one. MVP also looked insane against Kevin Holland. And I think if Shara comes in, like, thinking he can just sort of dance around MVP. He's going to get surprised because of that speed. And I'm torn here because we've got the Saudi Dutch. I want MVP. I think my pick is MVP. Also like the +3.5 line on the scorecards, but I'm kind of suspect about it only because if it goes to this decision, I know these Saudi judges love the Saudi boys. So I'm just, if it goes to decision, I would have a little bit of suspicion in how that's being scored.
Fair, but hopefully you can keep it close enough for your spread. But value here, I'm gonna go with Michael Page as well. I think he's been super impressive in his fights in the UFC. Should have come over a little earlier, probably would have had a better chance to actually make a real name for himself in the UFC and kind of fly up rankings a little bit. But unfortunately, that's not the case. I do think there's a chance here for a statement win, though, that he can kind of hang his hat on.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, I like your shout of the decision specifically. That seems honestly like a really good angle. But with that said, moving forward, we got the main event, Izzy Adesanya versus Nasruddin Imavov. Prices are in favor of Imavov, but is that what we should be actually expecting here? Walk us through
it. So yeah, this is gonna be this should be a pretty good fight. Izzy, we know him, great striker. I think he might have been a little bit slow in his last fight with Dricus, but he was lighting him up early, winning the exchanges in that one. But Dricus just grinded that one out. He had the forward pressure, the takedowns. I think if Izzy gets the opportunity to strike here, he definitely, and the striking looks as good as it did against Dricus, I think he has a really good shot at winning this one. Imavov is a good striker. Definitely not as good as Izzy. Maybe a bit higher volume, but he has nice jabs. Not really dangerous, not that technical in his striking either. Decent wrestling. Takedown defense is great. I don't know how much he's really going to have to worry about that here. It's going to be interesting to see what Imavov's game plan is going into this one. If he can get Izzy against the cage and frustrate him and drag him down, getting control time against the cage, I think that could be a big factor in the fight. I don't really think he's going to be able to just throw him around like Dricus did. I do think this will end up being mostly a striking match, so I'm going to go with Izzy. It's kind of difficult to see where Izzy's at in his career now, though. Like, is he really the number 3, or is his career kind of
on the decline?
Yeah, it's kind of just whether you think he's washed or not. If you think there's something in the tank, this feels like a relative no-brainer, but he's looked a little disinterested at times in his last few fights, and it's felt like he probably could have performed better or won some of those fights, but he just kind of was a little lethargic and just some questionable performances. But if you think and trust the things he's been saying going into this camp about trying to make a real final push in his career, and this is kind of the beginning of that. If he loses this fight, I wouldn't be surprised if it's his last, or at least one of his last, because it kind of puts a hamper on his ability to really climb up those rankings and make one last title push. So I feel like this fight probably means a lot to him if he values fighting a few more times in some valuable spots. I'm going to trust Izzy here, especially given underdog prices on PS. I feel like that's a pretty once in a lifetime deal you're going to get on here. So I'm going to rock with it this weekend.
Let's go Izzy. Style bender.
But yeah, that's the last fight, unless if they decide to do something random, which I don't think they will, but you never know. Invest accordingly. Subscribe if you haven't already. Eventually we'll get these fancy numbers that are like only X amount of people watch the video, and this is how many of you that actually subscribe, to make you feel worse about yourselves. But for now, just listen to decisions, fade me, listen to Jackson and Grant. And until next time, we'll talk to y'all later. Hope you have a great day. Peace, y'all.
Peace.